Well, hello everyone, and welcome into our Sunday edition of JW World News. That's the news the Watchtower doesn't want us talking about. But folks, I have to tell you, there's so much news to talk about. Right now, the Watchtower is in a position that they have never been in their life. They are on intensive care. They are hemorrhaging. People are leaving in droves. And I'm not just looking through rose-colored glasses when I say it. Well, hello, my name's Rick Farron, and I do the JW World News on Saturday night and every other Sunday right here on our 6 screens, Tele Network. And we welcome you in today. And I have to tell you, some of the news coming across the internet this week, very, very disturbing. And one of the things that caught everyone's attention, I'm sure you saw it as well. How could you miss it? The coverage on the CSA, child sex abuse in the Watchtower. It's getting a lot of traction. I counted 50 news sites online from from the different Wall Street newspapers were covering it. We had it covered in a number of big-time newspapers across the country. Forbes network covered it. Unbelievable. I can't imagine why the witnesses are not seeing this, but I guess they are seeing it. I'm going to tell you why. But I came across an article. One that really got my attention was an article in the it was in the Philadelphia Inquirer. Let me just put this up. I want you to see it. I do have a screenshot of it, and I'm going to put this up so you can get a little idea of what I'm talking about. This was it looked like right on the front page of the Philadelphia Inquirer, and here it is right here. Take a look at this. That's it. Look at that, Philadelphia Inquirer. Now, it's a picture of a woman on that. You can see it if you're on YouTube. Her name is Sarah Brooks. She's a former Jehovah's Witness, and she was raised as a witness, and she was sexually abused for 2 years when she was a teenager by a family friend, a male family friend, and also a former sister-in-law. So a woman pedophile as well was sexually abusing her. So that's right there on the front cover of the Philadelphia Inquirer. And now here's the headlines. Here's the headlines that got my attention. Shredding evidence of abuse. Shredding evidence of abuse. Well, what does that mean? So I read the article. I'm going to paraphrase it because we don't have a whole lot of time. But just to point out something that is a crime here, friends, and the Philadelphia Inquirer is reporting it. There were 2 elders that were involved in this. They were trying to cover up the fact that she was abused sexually, and they disfellowshipped her, and they did that because of her evidently promiscuity. They didn't blame the elders, but they blamed her. But the point I want to get to here is all of this when they told her not to go to the police because it would bring reproach upon Jehovah's name, right? That's what the witnesses tell those that are abused. Don't go to the police. You'll bring reproach on Jehovah. Well, she was sick of it. So she went and told her mother and father, and they were witnesses, and they should have known about it. That's what children should do, is go tell your mother and father. So the mother and father went to the elders and said, hey, look at these 2 guys, they're doing this to my daughter. They're raping her. They're sexually abusing her. So this triggered an emergency meeting of the elders. And they were getting the point that it looked like this was going to be reported to the police. So what did they do? It's right in the newspaper. What did the elders do? So, of course, they called Watchtower. That's what they're instructed to do. Whenever this child sexual abuse gets out, call Watchtower. They'll give the answer. Do you know what Watchtower told them to do? Get a shredder. So they bought a shredder, and they shredded up the paperwork surrounding this case. Friends, that's a crime. That is a crime. And here's the Watchtower doing this. How could you possibly, friends, if you're a Jehovah's Witness listening to this broadcast live, or you're listening to it in the archives when you're searching the internet, friends, that's not a good thing. They say they're Christian. They say that God's only true religion on the planet. Well, would God's true religion tell the elders to shred the documents to cover up the evidence of sexual child abuse? Absolutely not. That in itself would be enough to move me to the exit door. I'll tell you that. And it's just something that this stories all over the place, not just in the Philadelphia Inquirer, but there are stories all over the place, folks. There are news, all the local news stations in Pennsylvania. If you were, and I mention this a lot, but if you're an elder, if you're a Jehovah's Witness in the state of Pennsylvania, this has got to be, you'd be embarrassed. I'd be embarrassed driving into a Kingdom Hall lot, never mind going out in service. What type of an organization is trying to get away with this? The Watchtower. Geez, at least the Catholics, they acknowledged it. Other organizations acknowledged it and try to do something about it. Like the Southern Baptists, for example. Yeah, there's pedophiles in the Southern Baptist Convention. Yeah, there is. I know you know that. But they came forward and at least admit it and make an apology to the people. The Watchtower doesn't do this. But now here's the thing I wanted to bring to your attention. This got my attention big time this week. Now, in the midweek meeting, you know, they always have a midweek meeting at the Kingdom Hall. Well, this week's midweek meeting, at the end of their Bible study, they have a meeting on studying the Bible. It's like the book study, right? So at the end of the book study, they took 5 minutes and they acknowledged, the conductor acknowledged, it was also in the book itself, that child molestation is a terrible thing. And then the conductor brought out that it even does happen in Jehovah's organization. Now, what would you do if you were sitting there and you heard this? Child sex abuse is happening in the organization. Maybe you're coming in cold, you never heard of it. I'm sure there's many PMOs, many people that have, but there's some people who heard this for the first time. Wouldn't you be shocked? You know, this is Jehovah's organization. And, you know, so many of the witnesses, because I've been getting people giving me information on what some of the witnesses said when they brought this up in the midweek meeting. And some of the witnesses says, well, there's pedophiles in every organization. I'm not going to buy that. This is God's pure organization. These men are appointed by so-called Holy Spirit to be elders and ministerial servants. If this is God's pure organization, why would God, Jehovah, why would he ever choose by Holy Spirit, by his active force, why would he ever want these people to be elders? What this organization, I mean, come on. If you're a witness listening in here, could you just sit up for a second? Just sit up for a second and then think about this. Put your thinking cap on. This is not Jehovah's organization. How could it be? It can't. So, you know, I'll tell you what, they're in trouble. They are in trouble. They're not going to get away with that in the Philadelphia Inquirer. The Watchtower is not going to get away with instructions of shredding the evidence. It's not going to happen. I mean, someone's going to pick up on that. The Attorney General. I mean, that's going to go all the way to the top. That'll go to the top echelon of government. It should go federal. They should look into this at this point. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. So the Attorney General's office in Pennsylvania, the woman's name, she's the Attorney General. Her name is Michelle Henry. And I tell you, she's a pit bull. She is a pit bull. She's not letting up. They're investigating over 500 congregations in Pennsylvania. Every single Jehovah's Witness congregation in Pennsylvania is being investigated by the Attorney General. Well, what would you do if you're an elder? Now, okay, suppose you never really sexually abused anybody, but suppose you were in an elders meeting where they were covering this up. You know, you could be on the hook for that. I'm going to tell you right now, if you're an elder, not only in Pennsylvania, but if you're an elder, I would look for the exit door. I would get out of that position as fast as I possibly could. Other than that, you might as well send me an invitation to your funeral. because I mean, really, you'll be so stressed out, you might not even make it in life. Plus, plus being an elder today, you run the risk of losing your house. You could be sued. You could lose your house. You could lose your car. You could be sent to prison. I'm not in any way over embellishing this. These guys are now involved in a crime, and the world is starting to find out about it. For many years, they covered it up. So now we're starting to see the elders. They got to start getting a little nervous here. I mean, really, you just can't sit back and listen to all of this stuff you're hearing on the news and reading in newspapers and want to be part of this. Are you kidding me? You gotta say, come on, I'm getting out of here. But I was even thinking about that book study, the midweek meeting book study, where at the end they brought up the fact that there's pedophiles in our organization. See, what they're doing here is they're trying to normalize it. Now that's what they're doing. They're trying to make it like what's normal. They're everywhere. They're in our organization too. It's called damage control. Now, they mention it without making a big deal about it. They're hoping no one will really notice it, but that's what the big guys do. It's called damage control. And they try to normalize bad behavior. Well, everybody else does it too. But I'll tell you what, not everybody else does what the Watchtower does. Yeah, I know child molestation and sexual abuse. It's done in a lot of organizations. But at least, the other organizations come forth. Do you guys remember back in the 1980s, the Watchtower pointed its finger at the Catholic Church when the child sex abuse issues were first coming to light? Right up here in Boston, Cardinal Law was in the Boston Globe, and the spotlight was shined on the Catholic Church on how they were hiding all of these pedophiles. And so many young people were abused in the Catholic Church, boys and girls. Yeah, in fact, the Watchtower in print, and I can remember this because I can remember sitting in the Kingdom Hall and kind of discussing this with people. The Watchtower in print, along with many statements from the platform and comments from the rank and file, pointed out how this was one of the many horrible things the Catholic Church was guilty of in proof of their not having God's backing. That was in print. I believe it was in a Watchtower. And in that Watchtower, it talked about the Catholic Church was guilty, and that was proof of their not having God's backing. Well, why can't they say the same today? These witnesses are hearing it now. They now know, at least of last week, they brought it up in the meeting that Jehovah's Witnesses have pedophiles in the organization. So how is it that Jehovah's Witnesses are any different than the Catholic Church? How is it? I would like to know that. But it really is despicable to me. We were out last Sunday, as a matter of fact, and we were doing a protest up here in Lowell, Mass. And wow, what a great protest it was. And we were highlighting, we were at a convention. We were at a regional convention, and we were protesting the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses are covering up child sex abuse. And we had beautiful banners. Wow, we had, pictures of the pedophiles on the banners. And we were stationed right at the end of when the witnesses were leaving the arena, they had to go right by us. There was a one way out, and they had to go right by us, and there was a stop sign. They had to stop. And they were looking and reading the banners, and some of the witnesses were taking pictures of us standing there. One woman, I mentioned this last night, she left early, about 10 minutes before the convention got over, and she stopped and rolled the windows down, and she said, "Man, I'm glad you guys are here." She says, "You have to, they don't realize it, but this sexual abuse thing, it has to be under control. Someone's going to do something." And she said, "I'm glad you're here." She says, "I really appreciate it." And she listens into the 6 screens. I said, "Well, that's good." And so it worked out really well. We had so many people that they were giving us thumbs up. They were beeping the horn at us. Many wouldn't look at us either, but the younger ones, mostly they would. So we had a really good time at that protest. in Lowell, Massachusetts last Sunday. And I'll tell you what, I felt, I'm 75 years old, but I felt like a 20-year-old out there. I'm serious. I had energy. I was bebopping, jumping all over the place, and I was excited. I was so excited. I got this adrenaline rush, and that's what you get. That's what you get, an adrenaline rush when you're standing out in front of a Kingdom Hall or a convention center. Because, you know, a lot of people would say, well, don't do that, Rick. Don't stop this protesting. It does nothing. I disagree. I disagree. Protests have changed governments. Now, you know, I don't expect that protest is going to put the Watchtower out of business tomorrow. But I'll tell you what, all you have to do, and I often think of this illustration, what you have to do with Jehovah's Witnesses is you have to point out one little flaw at a time. And I use the illustration of the Getty Museum. That's an art museum in Los Angeles, California. And it's an art museum. And I mean, a prized, award-winning art museum. And the curator, his name was Mr. Turner. And one day, and I read this article in the New York Times, and one day Mr. Turner was coming down the staircase of the museum. And he saw a painting, a masterpiece painting on the side of the wall. And he's looking at that painting. He said, now this doesn't look right to me. The way the nose is painted doesn't look right. So there's one little flaw. And now every time Mr. Turner walked past that picture as he was coming down the staircase, he saw, well, that ear isn't right. And the way the artist painted this hair, this I believe this is a counterfeit. And it turned out to be a counterfeit. So this is exactly what happens in the watch on what we're trying to do as apostates. If we can point out one little flaw. So we were standing in front of that convention, and I was trying to point out the flaw of child sex abuse going on. So, you know, maybe they took that and they go, okay, so that's one flaw. But then he might go home and start looking things up, and they see another flaw, then another flaw. And that leads to them saying, that's it, I've had enough. And isn't that basically how it happened for all of us coming out of the Watchtower? We seen one thing led to another. First, we didn't even believe it. We were witnesses. You know what I'm talking about. When I first heard about the United Nations, I couldn't believe it. I thought it was all phony stuff that apostates were putting up. But as you do it, you research it, then you pick out one flaw. Then I learned about Johannes Grieber and how he was a spirit-directed person from Satan the devil. And Watchtower was in cahoots with this person at one time. So, you know, this is what you see. So I believe that protesting, if you can just bring one little flaw, if a person can leave that convention and say, geez, those apostates, they had signs out there saying we're covering up child molesters. Well, maybe they'll go home and look it up and find out. Just punch Jehovah's Witness into Google and you'll be surprised. Well, I wish we had some more time. We had to do a little shortened edition today, but I'm glad you joined us here. We have more programming coming up. We have the Christian Court. You don't want to leave. That's a good program that's coming up next in about a minute or so. So I want to thank you all for coming in, and I really appreciate it. I want you to keep standing tall. I don't want you to ever give in, up, or out exposing the Watchtower. Just keep doing it. Tell everyone you know this is a dangerous cult. And the more people we have do that, I'll tell you what, we're not going to see the Watchtower around much longer. So thank you for coming in today. And remember, the last one, leaving the Watchtower, please turn off the new light. Let's go to the Christian Court. Let's end this program right now.